Hi there.
Hello, everyone.
And it's telling me we're live.
Okay, we're good. Hopefully I don't freeze up.
Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm testing my AirPods because I'm using my son's and I didn't know if they're going to work, so we're good.
Works good.
Thank you.
Kim, are we having either of the students join today? I don't see
Yes,
anyone.
Yes, I sent them both the invitation, and one asked about joining online because she hadn't seen that it was fully online meeting. So I'm expecting them.
Okay. Hey, Axel.
There's Axel.
All right, good evening. It's 7 o'clock, so we will begin tonight's meeting. And Kim, has this meeting been posted?
It has.
And record will show that all 5 board members are present this evening, and we have one of our 2 student representatives joining us at this time, and we expect the second one to join us later. At this time, I invite you to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So Ms. Midzik, is there communication that you'd like to share tonight?
Yes. Per Board Policy 188, a quorum of the board has made a request to the superintendent to participate virtually. Therefore, the board will conduct tonight's meeting in a fully online environment. A closed session will follow the regular board meeting, and the board will not return to open session. As always, this board meeting is being live streamed on the Greendale Schools YouTube channel. Comments from visitors are welcome. Persons wishing to address the board were asked to email citizencomments@greendale.org, at greendaleschools.org, or call at least 30 minutes prior to the start of the meeting, and we do have comments this evening. The information was shared on the meeting agenda when it was posted last week and was shared through the principal's newsletters. Property tax bills are now posted online, and paper bills are arriving to homes now. The school district tax decreased 2.6%, and the village tax increased 2.3%. For homes without an assessment change, the total tax is up about 0.1% based on the lower lottery tax credit.
I think
Kim
is frozen.
Yeah.
Can we have someone contact her to let her know that she's frozen?
I have done so.
All right, thanks, Kitty. All right, Kim, I believe, is also the one that has all the citizen comments that she was going to share tonight. There. Kim, you're back. You're on mute right now, and we froze you as you were reading some of your communication.
Okay, let's try that again. Hopefully I don't
Sorry.
freeze again, but otherwise I might have to shift locations.
Okay.
Property tax bills are now posted online and paper bills are arriving in homes now. The school district tax decreased 2.6% and the village tax increased 2.3%. The total change in tax bills are about 0.1% increase based on the lower lottery tax credit this year. The school connection is in December focuses on spending wisely. It's now posted online and delivery is underway to mailboxes in the village. All 5 schools have transitioned to virtual learning environment temporarily. Greendale Middle School and Greendale High School will have live virtual classes 5 days per week through the end of first semester. The reopening Greendale Schools team is further reviewing feedback received in the Pulse survey and will provide an update to the board at the next board meeting on December 21st regarding secondary learning environments for second semester. That's a lot of seconds. At the elementary level, students will attend live virtual instruction for the period between Thanksgiving and winter break. The decision to move temporarily to virtual learning is intended to minimize disruptions to learning and the secondary trauma that can be created with abrupt and unexpected changes caused by illness and quarantines. We learned in the few weeks before Thanksgiving, as community spread climbed, that classroom learning was highly dysregulated and disrupted by the volume of staff and students testing positive for COVID, becoming ill, and quarantining because of close contacts. Rather than wait for the inevitable quarantines that would isolate students and staff,
Kim froze again.
Greendale time, we can predict there will be. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Y-
Where did I cut off?
At the inevitable.
Okay, thank you. Inevitable quarantines that would isolate students and staff. Greendale is choosing to learn virtually at a time we can predict there would be a high impact of community spread on the learning environment. Public health is predicting that the period between Thanksgiving and winter break will be high. The health departments in Milwaukee County are reporting, quote, although Milwaukee County COVID-19 trends are leveling, there is still a high burden of the virus in our community, and the impact of Thanksgiving gatherings is still unknown. The positivity rate is well over 10%, which is of high concern, and is showing early signs of increasing again. The number of new positive cases identified each day is still much higher than early in the pandemic. The CDC and the Wisconsin Department of Health Services have recently, as of Friday, revised quarantine recommendations, and we will be discussing the impact of these changes on school protocols with the Greendale Health Department this week. In addition, CDC officials see the value of students learning in person, the relatively low risk to children, and has made statements about in-person learning. The reopening Greendale Schools team continues to follow and evaluate emerging evidence and recommendations. We will continue to evolve our learning environments and protocols while working to maintain predictability for students in an unpredictable environment. We have been working with our consultant at EMC regarding the cluster of COVID cases at Highland View. EMC has guided us on evaluating air quality and HVAC performance. They are performing testing today with a plan of releasing the building for staff use later this week. Out of an abundance of caution, we are bringing in an independent HVAC consultant to review all of our systems and advise if there are potential risks at Highland View or other buildings. We will review the Highland View location prior to staff returning this week, and we will report when the independent investigation is completed and any additional recommended mitigation strategies we will take to address the findings. Competitions for winter sports begin this week at the high school level for boys and girls basketball and boys swim. Beginning next week, competition in the gym will be available for public viewing via live stream. This information will be shared on the district website. And finally, free meals for all children ages 0 to 18 years old are served on school days in a curbside manner at Greendale by Greendale Food Service. The meal program is funded by the USDA. During our temporary transition to digital learning, meals are being offered at GHS and College Park on school days from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. That concludes my communications. And I'm going to move locations and have someone else read the citizen comments so that I can get a stable connection.
All right, thanks, Kim. So we will have citizen comments. These are comments that citizens either emailed or called in 30 minutes before the start of tonight's meeting. So we will then help me out as who's going to be reading the comments this evening.
I'm walking them across the office to Jonathan.
Yeah, I can take care of that.
All right, thanks, Jonathan.
I'm going to work on my connection.
So the first comment is from Jason Lauren, who is a Highland View parent. December 7th, school board meeting from CDC Director Robert Redfield on November 20th. The truth is, for kids K-12, one of the safest places they can be from our perspective is to remain in school. And it's really important that following the data, making sure we don't make emotional decisions about what to close and what not to close, Redfield continued. I'm here to say clearly the data strongly supports that K-12 schools, as well as institutes of higher learning, really are not where we're having our challenges. Greendale Schools has been following CDC guidelines. So do you agree with the CDC director that schools are safe, especially when they are wearing masks, social distancing, and washing their hands? What data do you have that COVID-19 has spread at Highland View? Superintendent Kim Amidzik told me in an email that 300 students were, quote, in close contact of a positive case. Do you have any data on how many of those 300 got COVID-19? And if so, how many got it from exposure at Highland View? If you don't have data on how many of those 300 got COVID-19, do you have any data on how many of those kids have missed virtual school days due to being sick? The next comment is from Jim and Trisha Ward. I first want to thank you for putting together protocols to try to keep in-person learning available. Obviously, what's happening is out of your control, and as hard as it is, I do support the decision to temporarily stop in-person learning. I know soon you will start discussing next school year. I would like to suggest making 4K all day instead of having 2 sessions AM and PM. I know room capacity was always an issue in the past, and now with the construction at Highland View, extra classrooms were added. St. Alphonsus and Greenfield, 2 local schools, have full day 4K. With the current included lottery system attached to the half-day 4K, it makes it very inflexible for all parents to work around that schedule. We have little kiddos at home and both parents work full-time. Can you imagine as a working parent around a lottery system that is chosen for you AM and PM, and then still there's only a half-day 4K program? According to research, there are also many benefits of full-day 4K, such as higher long-term achievement, especially in disadvantaged and low-income families. More time can be spent in individualized instruction and intervention. Also, there are fewer grade retentions and higher reading scores. It's not just all academics, there's also greater progress in social skills. As you consider next school year, I'd like you to consider having full-day 4K as an option. Half-day could also still be an option as it is in St. Alphonsus. I would like you to consider modeling after our close neighbor schools, such as St. Alphonsus and Greenfield School District. Thank you for your time and consideration, Jim and Trisha Ward. The next comment is from Paige. This is Nat Godley comments to the Greendale Board of Education on behalf of Paige on December 7th, 2020. Paige understands that Greendale schools will propose a Black History Ethnic Studies class to be taught at Greendale High School at this evening's meeting. While we are pleased to see better representation introduced to the curriculum, the lack of further information on the planning process and context raises concerns that this proposal has not been comprehensively thought out, is not sufficiently supported with systemic reform of the core curriculum, and that as it currently stands, it may actually undermine the goal of broader representation in our school's curriculum. Firstly, we understand that this class is planned as an elective. Our concern here is that this may lead to the draining of content representing America's diverse history from core classes into this class, and that students who decide not to take this elective, many of whom may be among those who need that content most urgently, will not be exposed to these central aspects of our nation's history. Any proposal for a specialized elective class needs, therefore, to be accompanied by detailed and transparent plans to ensure the continuation and increase of diverse representation in all core U.S. history classes that all students are required to take. Secondly, we believe this is an opportunity for a concerted effort to help address the diversity gap between students and faculty and hire at least one faculty member of color in the social studies area. Greendale certainly already has some excellent white social studies faculty teaching this content well in U.S. history classes, both at the high school and the middle school. But a faculty member of color would add greatly to the design of such a class, as well as strengthening of diverse curriculum in required social studies classes by bringing the lived experience that those of us who do not suffer the oppression of white supremacy do not have. This would also help meet the district's goal of improving representation for students of color. Of course, given Greendale's demographics, it may be difficult to attract a qualified teacher of color to a position. Any candidate would have to know that they would be supported, especially in a position that, as recent events in Burlington schools suggest, would likely draw vicious and unjustified attacks. Unfortunately, having heard that Greendale teachers have been told not to hang Black Lives Matter signs in their classrooms, an opinion deemed, quote, political despite being a simple statement of their students' humanity, Page is deeply concerned that such transformational education, especially if delivered by an educator who is already marginalized in the wider society, will not be institutionally supported by the administration and the board. Page's primary concern is that a rushed proposal for a single elective course may create an ineffective and superficial solution to a deep systemic problem of lack of representation, and thus may fail to achieve the objective of increasing representation for all students. Remedying the lack of accurate representation in Greendale Schools curriculum needs to be carefully and holistically planned. The district must carefully assess student interest to gauge successful enrollment, take steps to ensure and increase that enrollment, plan effective and persuasive responses to the inevitable negative reactions from certain elements of the local community, including some Greendale students and their families. Ensure that any new electives are only complementary additions to fundamental transformations in core curriculum as well as in the broader culture of the schools, including in staffing. Guarantee protections and support for faculty and students, especially those of color, who embrace and advocate for these changes. Craft the curriculum so as to ensure that it does not lead to apathy, appropriation, or siloing the topic. And lastly, this effort needs to be measured with clear metrics of success, both quantitative, meaning enrollment percentage of content that reflects America's diversity in core classes, as well as qualitative, such as climate surveys of faculty and students of color, as well as surveys that gauge white students' understanding of how this new curriculum affects their understanding of American society. Until the board and the public get clear and detailed information on these criteria, Page has grave concerns that this may end up a tokenistic proposal that weakens rather than strengthens representation, diversity, and racial justice teaching in our schools. The next comment is from CERN, Wisconsin, C-E-R-N, Wisconsin. Good afternoon. In support of Page and anti-racism in Wisconsin suburban schools, we are writing to express great concern with Greendale's plan to begin an African American history class. What are the measures and who is at the table to ensure this initiative is truly anti-racist? In light of the fact that Greendale has already launched an ethnic studies course that failed, Greendale must pursue such initiatives with care and with enough input to ensure success and reduce harm to the intended population that needs to be uplifted. BIPOC students are already undeserved and under attack. CERN urges Greendale to 1, focus on anti-racism in all classrooms. Any tool launched without intentional anti-racism learning will further divide and discriminatory practices of a school district. Teachers and administration are the front line to the work of ending racial bias in education. Number 2, hire anti-racist educators. An anti-racist, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color educator should lead a course of this magnitude. 3, enact an anti-racism policy. When educating on new ideas, ignorance may be displayed and harm may become to BIPOC students. A policy will help to ensure BIPOC students can be served in moments of crisis and trauma. 4, ensure the success of this course by seeking college credits for students who enroll. An incentive may help ensure enrollment and success. These are a few areas of concerns that do not fully encompass the dangers of moving forward without a commitment to anti-racist education in Greendale School District. Please always center the voices and concerns of BIPOC students, families, and staff going forward. Regards, the CERN team. The last comment is from Carrie Wan from Beaver Court. For the past 3 years, Black Lives Matter at School Week has been held nationally. Greendale has never participated. February 3rd through 7th, 2021, instead of celebrating the 3rd National Black Lives Matter at School Week, the Greendale school decided instead to make Spirit Week and instructed the kids to wear hats one day, red one day, Greendale shirts one day, making no room to acknowledge this national celebration of Black lives. This was very disheartening considering the Equity Action Plan had already come about and the district had committed to making equity a priority. I would like to ensure that the Greendale School District is held accountable for making this educational event meaningful in February 2021. Greendale is in dire need of education on the topic of race. Not acknowledging Black Lives Matter at School Week in Greendale speaks volumes. And that is the end of citizen comments.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. And later in tonight's meeting, we'll talk a little bit about the course additions. There were some comments at tonight's meeting that referenced one of the classes that is being proposed to be added for the next school year. So we will talk about that at tonight's meeting. And then we will have in the spring a more comprehensive report on the time for learning K-4 instruction. So but good feedback from the community. Continuing on with the agenda, next item on the agenda is approval of the regular board meeting minutes of November 16th. Are there any questions? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I move approval of the regular meeting minutes of November 16th as outlined in agenda item 3.
Second.
There's been a motion, a second, to approve the regular meeting minutes of November 16th, 2020. Any further discussion? Then I'll call for roll call votes, starting with Kim.
Yes.
Noel,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Thor,
Yes.
and I am yes, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the school safety plan. So this is the safety plan that we reviewed at our last board meeting. So Steve Lotus, principal of the Greendale High School, as well as the lead over the school safety and security, shared with us that report. But one of the requirements at the state level is to actually approve the plan every year. So any further discussion or administration, anything that you'd like to add?
Nothing to add.
All right, so any questions or comments about that? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I just wanted, oh, I was, oh, sorry.
Yep. Go
Make
ahead. You have a
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know, I did an in-depth look at the report and it looks great. I'm really proud of the work that Greendale School District is doing with our police department in making sure our schools are safe. So I just wanted to make that little comment.
Right, thank you. And like mentioned at the last board meeting, you know, I think this is a good opportunity for the village of Greendale to understand and know the work that happens between the schools and our police and fire department. All right, any other questions? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve the school safety plan as outlined in agenda item 4.
Is there a
Second.
second? There's been a motion and a second to approve the school safety plan. Any further discussion? Then I call for a roll call vote. Kim?
Yes.
Noel?
Yep.
Kathy?
Yes?
Thor?
Yes.
And I'm yes, motion carries. Thanks again, Steve, for your work on that. Continuing on the agenda, number 5, we are going to be hearing a Panther Pride report. So at tonight's meeting, Ms. Slater, our principal of Highland View Elementary, will be sharing with us an update of things that are happening in Highland View Elementary School.
Yes, indeed. So this is, we've started having each school highlight a point of pride. And so tonight's report from Mrs. Flater, it looks like she's ready to share her screen. She will be presenting. Sometimes we like to have kids and students come present with us, but it's a little difficult in this environment. So I know that she's had ways that she can share the student's voice with you.
Okay, so just making sure first you can hear me and see my screen. Because I can't see you guys.
Oh, yes.
So,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
I can hear and see you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so I'm really excited to be here tonight to talk to you about how we are strengthening our school community at Highland View through culturally responsive literature and what we call principal Read-Alouds. So reading aloud has always been one of my absolute favorite things to do with students. Since I was in the classroom, I've always felt that the relationships that can be built during a read aloud time hold incredible power, purpose, and promise. And I had been thinking for quite some time about how to incorporate read alouds into my practice as a building principal. So in looking at our student survey data around belonging and looking at indicators like students feeling safe in our building, both physically and socially and emotionally, students feeling excited to come to school, along with our work around responsive practices, I began noticing last year in particular that students were struggling with how they spoke with one another. Oftentimes, students would express unkind sentiments towards one another. And then when reflecting on those comments, either with me or with their classroom teacher, they would discuss how they had been upset and didn't really mean it when they were talking. And so it was during this time that I decided to put our first principal read aloud into place with the books Words Are Not for Hurting by Elizabeth Verdick and Just Kidding by Trudy Ludwig. So during these conversations, during these read alouds, I went into the classrooms 5K through 5th grade, and I read Words Are Not for Hurting with kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, actually kindergarten and 1st grade, and Just Kidding with 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. The books are really about how our words and our actions have an impact on others, even if we can't see it, and what we can do to be more kind in our words and our actions. I also worked with them around our character trait of that month when I first started, which was integrity and doing the right thing, even when it's hard to do. Because a lot of the unkind talk is done at times when adults aren't necessarily hearing it. So like in the cafeteria or recess, during small group work in the classroom, things like that. So I read the books with each grade level, each classroom. And then I really wanted to try to figure out a way that I could make the idea of intent versus impact visual for them. And so I went into each classroom, we read the story, and then I had a red construction paper heart that I made for each classroom. And I asked the kids, can you describe this heart for me? And they would say things like, well, very literal, like it's red, or they would say it is whole or it's smooth. And I would tug at it and say, what do you think about the strength of this heart? Kind of to feed them. And they would say, oh, it's strong. And then we would start to talk about things that kids might say or do that might rip or tear at our heart. And they gave some examples. So things like teasing someone because of the length of their hair, or because of the clothes that they wear, or the clothes that they don't wear, like different brand names of things, how they throw a ball, the color of their skin, things like that. And so every time we would give one of those examples, I'd take the heart and I would physically rip it into a piece. And we talk about how unkind words can tear at our heart. And then I asked them, if you see, look at the middle picture, I would say, okay, now here are these pieces. Let's try to put them back together. And it's really actually more challenging, even in 4 or 5 pieces, to put this heart together. And the kids worked together to try and do it. And we used tape as kind of metaphorical I'm sorries or apologies. And then they taped the heart back together. Then we described the heart again. How would you describe it now? Well, it's torn, it's broken, it's not whole anymore, it's weaker, you can see through it, things like that. And so that really drove home for them the idea of intent versus impact, and how sometimes our words and our actions aren't always, we can't always see the impact of them, but the impact always outweighs the intent. And so this activity and the language we used, I've been able to use over and over again with kids, and it really helps them understand how their words impact others, how their actions impact others. So one of the things, though, that as I did these lessons with kids, is I noticed that whenever I got to the part, the color of someone's skin, because that was always an example I gave, there would be a sense of discomfort or actual audible gasps from the kids, like that I had said those words and we're talking about someone's skin color out loud. And that didn't sit right with me. It sat very heavily with me. And I knew that our next principal read aloud was going to focus on the topic of skin color. However, as a white educator, I wasn't sure how to go about that. And I wanted to be sure I did it right, with critical cultural responsiveness and critical consciousness. So it was around that time that Sarah Derrick and Carrie Owens and I were set to go to Teachers College in New York for their Equity Inclusion Institute around facilitating conversations about race. And I got to tell you, every time I go out to New York to Teachers College, it's been twice since I've been in Greendale, I come back with the learning I've needed in order to take an idea and fully implement it within our building. So thank you so much for not only supporting the learning and growth of our teachers in the district, but thank you for supporting the learning and growth of us as administrators as well, because it really does make a difference. So one of the sessions that we took part in was with Sonia Cherry Paul, and it was called Locating Race in Culturally Relevant Pedagogy, Fostering Identity-Rich Reading and Writing Workshops. And she talked in this session about different applications and implications that we need to consider in our classrooms and our schools. And 3 of those, they all stuck with me, but 3 really applied to the work that I was trying to do within our Read-Alouds. And so working around engaging cultural competence and critical consciousness, understanding our students and our own personal identifiers and social identities, and fostering identity-rich reading and writing workshops. So from this large group session, we transitioned into smaller group sessions around interactive read-alouds and identity-rich texts. And this is where the question in the black text box was asked, and where how to do an interactive read-aloud was modeled, and where I began planning for the next principal read-aloud that I would do. So the session facilitator of the small group modeled an interactive read aloud through the book, All the Colors We Are, The Story of How We Get Our Skin Color by Katie Kissinger. The book is a nonfiction book, and it really discusses the science and the 3 components to skin color: our ancestors, the sun and how much sun and the intensity of the sun we are exposed to, and melanin. So when I went to do this read aloud with students, I approached it a little differently depending on the grade level. So the previous read aloud, I had just done kindergarten through 5th grade, but then decided that our 4K learners needed to be a part of these important discussions too. And so for 4K, 1st grade and 2nd grade, I started the conversation with a Sesame Street video. It was about 2 minutes long with Elmo and Lupita Nyong'o. They talked about skin color and loving the skin that you're in. And then I read the story or the book with our 4K through 2nd grade learners. For grades 3rd through 5th, I actually went back to the first read aloud and discussed my observations from our time together in the classroom and named for them. You know, I found it interesting, and I noticed that whenever I mentioned the example of skin color, that made some of you uncomfortable. And I want you to know that it's okay to talk about skin color, and we want to talk about the color of our skin and celebrate those differences between us. And then I read the book to 3rd through 5th grade. During the book, we discussed the components of ancestors and sun and melanin. And if you see in the pictures, the top picture and the middle picture is specific to talking about melanin, which are particles in our skin. And we talked about how the slower your melanin moves, the lighter shade of skin color you have. And the faster your melanin moves, the darker your skin color will be. And so the kids were using their fingertips as the melanin particles in our skin. And we modeled slow melanin, we modeled fast melanin, and then they took a look at their own skin color and thought, you know, how fast is my melanin moving? So that was our second principal read aloud. And then that was around like February, March, and COVID happened. So the plan had been to come back around and read another book around skin color with grades 4K through 2nd, and then move into Let's Talk About Race by Julius Lester for grades 3 through 5. So we kind of had a pause on that. And then as we returned to school this year, we began with our read alouds once again. I felt though that we needed to back things up a little bit after being away since March and really work on the importance of identity. And so by incorporating a Hispanic author in Juana Martinez Neal, we read, and Hispanic Heritage Month in September and October, I chose to focus on names and the importance of our names in relation to our identity. And so the story that we selected was Alma and how she got her name. So in addition to the story, staff was also working on identity building through our September and October professional development sessions. And I linked our work with Alma, our Alma Read Aloud, by sharing the article, Say Their Names Correctly from Day One, Always is the title of the article, by Sonia Cherry Paul, who was one of our facilitators during our Equity Institute at the Teachers College. So Alma is about a little girl who has a very long name and isn't really happy about her name. But through the story that her father tells her about her name, really starts to make connections to her name and appreciate who she is and what that name makes her and stands for in her life. So I worked with the kids around our focus of identity. And we talked about how identity is who we are, and our names can be a window into who we are and how we want to be seen. And so then I shared my name with students and made them, they had to make me a deal though. If I shared my first name with them, they still had to call me Mrs. Flater during school. But when they graduated from high school, they could call me by my first name, Tracy. And so they all agreed to that, and I shared my name and what my name meant to me and my identity. And then they created their own nameplates and began sharing things about one another and their names as well. And so those nameplates are on their lockers, they're on their coat racks, they're outside their classroom doors, and everyone of our in-person learners has those to unify us within the building. But now with our digital learners, we were able to, I just actually did my first digital read aloud with Alma today in Mrs. Barris's 5th grade class. And so we created slides, and each of the kids has a slide, and they were able to add some items in that make them unique to who they are and their name. And so they are celebrating that and sharing that within their classrooms as well. So my goal is to have all of our in-person classrooms and our digital classrooms completed with our Read-Alouds by the time winter break comes. So our next steps will be to continue work around identity and selecting texts that are windows and mirrors for our students. I'd really like to add these texts to all of our classroom libraries and ensure that our school library has a copy of each book. Sarah and Carrie and I have been talking about developing a long-term plan around how to continue to weave past stories and work into future years and move this work into the other elementary buildings as well. And I would love to be able to, once we are fully open for visitors again, sometime in the future, incorporate guest readers into my principal Read-Alouds with me as well. So the next two books that I think we're going to read are Sulwe, which is Lupita Nyong'o, and it is a story that really inspires children to see their own unique beauty. And Julius Lester's Let's Talk About Race, which is the author's own story as he explores what makes each of us special. So at this time, I just want to ask if you guys have any questions, and I'll stop sharing so that I can see you again.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Very nice report. What questions or comments does the board have?
So Tracy, first of all, very nice job. And I'm going to check out some of those books myself. They sound very interesting. Can you started to touch on it, I think, as far as how you plan to incorporate this like next year and follow up. Will the same stories go to the same like the next grade next year, or how will you transition into another year, I guess?
That is a great question, and one that I am still that's kind of our plan, like on the next steps, like something to work out. So this year when I went in and started with Alma, I took, excuse me, the other books that we read, and we have, like I have vocabulary card, like focus cards with them. And so one says identity versus impact. The other one, I said, so we did a quick review of those books. And it was pretty cool because even like my first grade classrooms that were kindergartners last year, they could collectively name the 3 things that make our skin color, like contribute to our skin color, which was pretty cool because those were 5-year-olds. So, but I can't, like, as the book collection grows, I'll spend just as much time reviewing the stories with them as the actual sharing the new book. So that's what we're trying to kind of figure out, like, how are we going to continue the importance of the books that have already been shared in the past, but add to the collection with new books and new authors. So I don't have a great answer for you yet.
No, I know it's obviously new, and I just think that it's great that you're doing this. As a board member, I wouldn't even mind at some point being one of the guest readers if you are looking for people.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Kathy. Any other questions or feedback or comments?
Yes, yes, thank you. So is there a possibility that in the futures to come, if the book collection gets bigger, you might be able to separate it out per grade? I love the fact that you read it to the whole school, but if there's like some more complex topics that maybe is better for 5th graders to comprehend rather than kindergartners, if there's specific books per grade, so once they move on to the next grade, they have a new collection of books to discover and learn about.
Absolutely, Paris. That's a great observation too. We do some of it, I make sure that it's, as I read it, how I talk about it with the kids and the type of book that I choose is appropriate for the grade level. But we do want to make sure that all of our classrooms have different sets of books that are culturally responsive and are grade level appropriate. So what you might see in 5th grade will look different than what you see like in a 1st grade classroom. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or feedback? All right, thank you for sharing this evening, Tracy. Very nice job. I think it was important for the community to hear, how we approach equity and diversity with different learners, whether they're at the high school or the elementary school, and how we do it both as part of the curriculum as well as just as part of our conversations with our students. And so very nice job. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
All right, continuing on. Next item on the agenda is our technology infrastructure and integration report. So this is we'll be hearing from Ryan Jonas this evening about this annual report.
I believe Ryan has a presentation to share, so I will let him share his screen.
Great.
All right, can we see it?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we are.
All right. So thanks for having me speak this evening. Certainly a lot of good news to share in this department. And after talking about it for what seems to be many years, I'm very happy to announce that we are connected to WISCNet. And that means that our internet connection capacity is now 20 times what it used to be. So we have far more capacity than we need for today. But we're finally able to deliver on the needs and not hit that ceiling as we were before this upgrade. We also upgraded the links between buildings, so we truly have no bottlenecks within the district anymore. I continue to be active with the We Can group. This We Can, which is, by the way, the third meaning of this acronym that I know, is the Waukesha Education and Community Area Network. And this slide is perhaps really technical, but this group represents a large geographic area. Carroll University is kind of in the center top. And then I pointed out GSD. We are just a little small segment of this big network, but it's a group that is working to establish redundant connections to the internet, among other shared services. And being a part of this group gives us access to those redundant connections to further have a reliable network here in Greendale. So the last thing that was done on this is there's actually 2 red segments to connect New Berlin and Muskego, Norway. That was just recently completed. And again, another little tiny one between Muskego, Norway and Franklin. And we're in the process now of making some redundant connections. So we'll have 4 redundant connections to the internet when this project is done. So that is progressing well. A lot of planning around this, but we're finally getting to the end of the road on this project. Just a note on cost, because this is another headline besides the increased speed. We are realizing substantial savings with this. So for our old Spectrum internet connection, we were actually paying $40,600 per year. And that has dropped to $16,500 for, again, 20 times the capacity. And I put some additional one-time costs in there, but we're seeing just over a 5-year return on investment on those one-time costs. I've been working with Jonathan Mitchell, our business manager, on a long-range capital expenditure plan, and then tying that plan with funding sources. So there's multiple places that we can that we receive money, such as E-rate funding, federal funding that we can use on hardware-related upgrades. And so we're just simply forecasting out when our systems will be at the end of their useful life and tying that to budget allocations with E-rate. So that is wonderful to have in place. And I want to thank Jonathan for working with me on that to have that in place. This slide probably makes me more excited than the fiber project, which takes a lot. We traditionally, we've had the old computer lab model, where you go to a place, you do your technology and leave, and that has evolved over time. And now with the help of a program called AppStream by Amazon, we can now virtualize our computer labs, and those applications that required us to maintain computer labs in the district. And so now programs like AutoCAD, drafting, and Adobe Creative Suite can be accessed on Chromebooks, and not just in school, but anywhere there's an internet connection. So this is huge. Students no longer have to stay after school to be in that specific room to access that specific software. They can do it from home, or wherever, again, there's an internet connection. So the physical spaces that were labs still have computer monitors in them. We have purchased docks, so they just plug in their computers, they get a little boost on their battery charge, and they can take advantage of another external monitor, which is certainly a good thing if you're doing graphic design. So that is a huge highlight, and it was something we were working on the beginning of 2020, and of course the pandemic kind of made us go, well, we're going to make this work now, and maybe not pilot this as much as we otherwise would have. And there are little hurdles in the process, but we have been working hard with the students and teachers to get through those. So extremely excited to report on this. And finally, in partnership with the US Cellular, we have, and actually this number has gone up, it's 120 hotspots now have been signed out to both students and staff where needed. If there isn't an internet connection at home, or the internet connection at home just isn't enough for the demand. Sometimes, a lot of times we see parents that work from home, and then they also have remote learners, and there just isn't enough capacity. So very happy and proud to offer this program to both students and staff. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks, Ryan. So from the board or from our student representatives, any questions or feedback for Ryan?
It's great news on all fronts. Really kind of intrigued by the AppStream piece to see how that works, especially with some of those really heavyweight programs. And so has that been, is that being used right now, or is that something that's and it's working well?
Yes, it's being used heavily. Yep.
Right. That's awesome. And then you mentioned with the end of the WeCan project, we'll have 4 times redundancy.
That's correct. Yeah, so we'll connect up to Alverno. There's another WISCNet connection at Franklin, and then Carroll College, and one more out in that direction on the edge of Carroll to make the 4th.
And does that have additional one-time costs, or is that just part of our service contract now with the WeCan network?
So the WeCan membership fee depends on how many members they have. Every additional member they have, the annual fee goes down. So we're expecting about $2,000 a year. And then there are one-time costs. There's these multiplexing units, and the WeCan network is paying for those empty boxes, and then whatever members want to use it, they just have to buy their little modules to plug in, and that would be at our expense, and those would be one-time costs to make those redundant connections. And I feel a diagram in the future presentation coming up.
So Ryan, I just was wondering about the one-time payment to Franklin School District for $125,000. Could you explain that, and also what funding source that comes from?
Yep, I can answer the first part of that. So Franklin School District constructed fiber that they own between Franklin and Alverno. And it was much more cost effective for us to simply jump onto their existing fiber, because they pulled more than they needed, than it would be to have us construct from Greendale all the way to El Verno. And in fact, our network actually physically crosses at 51st and Ramsey. And so we just did a little cross connect and we jumped on. So it was a one-time fee. And then there is a recurring fee there for locates. So every time somebody calls Digger's Hotline and you see the little flags in the ground, the utility is actually paying for somebody to put those flags in. And so we're no different because we own our own fiber. Franklin owns their own. And so at the end of the day, the end of the year, whoever is on Franklin's fiber, that maintenance cost, whatever it is, gets divided equally for all of the participants on their fiber highway. And so it's Village of Greendale is connecting. By the end of the month, they'll be connected. So that'll be another way they get to divide it. We're on it. And when the WECAN builds are done, they will also be on it. So it'll continue to decrease. And then as far as the funding source, I would defer to Mr. Mitchell.
So regarding the funding source, Franklin gave us two options to pay that $120,000 upfront payment. One was to do that as a one-time by the end of last fiscal year, so June 30th, 2020. And then the other version was to make installment payments that accounted for essentially small interest amounts for 4 years. We made the decision at the end of the last fiscal year to pay that all up front. We were gauging at that time what resources we were going to have available for the current fiscal year. And certainly we've updated the board in terms of what that process has been to account for all the additional costs. And so based on some underspend that we had in other areas, we were able to finalize and make that one-time payment for the fiber line and just complete it so that we didn't have this recurring payment coming into this year. So that's all done as of the end of the 1920 school year. The only recurring costs are those that Ryan has identified.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Ryan. Ryan, you alluded to the fact a little bit about the village connecting. So when we started this fiber optics project, we had partnered with the village because both boards saw a benefit to combining and having the village as well as the schools connected on the same fiber optics. So this connection to WECAN completes the project for Greendale schools. And then can you just kind of give us a quick highlight of where the village is, again, that they might be at a different time frame?
Yep, they are not too far behind. So like you mentioned, we did want to go in and share the costs. Franklin actually preferred, and it does make sense to have individual agreements for every separate entity that is connecting to their fiber. So each entity gets their own 2 strands. And so for that reason, we had to do 2 separate arrangements versus the one. We do indirectly benefit twice, not only for the shared maintenance costs, though with us both connected to Franklin, that would be split evenly. We also benefit on the WECAN front because both the district and the village would be WECAN members, thus cutting that annual WECAN membership fee down because there's another member. So more separate than the original plan, but still benefiting 2 times over.
All right, thank you, Ryan. And again, another good example of where we've partnered with the village to do something that benefits the entire. We've partnered with the village board that does something that benefits the entire village.
Absolutely.
And any other questions or comments?
Quick question on the village front. Where is the fiber going to be used? Is that Village Hall, the safety center? Is it anywhere else that's going from the village?
So we are connecting the nearest that Franklin fiber goes is in the front yard of the DMV, so to speak. And so the actual fiber build is going to be from a point in the front yard of the DMV to kitty corner to the safety center. Once that connection is made, there's existing fiber optic cables that run from the safety center to Village Hall. And then in next year's budget, they run on the calendar year. There's plans to construct fiber from Village Hall to the CLC, which will benefit that whole complex. Because right now I have them connected with a wireless antenna to the clock tower that runs over the air, but that has definite bandwidth limitations, although kind of neat. And feeling like I was Doc Brown on top of that tower when I was putting that up. But the fiber will be a much better system for them.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Ryan. Any other comments or questions? All right, then we'll continue on with the agenda. Next item on the agenda is the proposed course changes for the 2021-2022 school year. So this is something that is an annual report that we hear from Steve Lotus, our principal, and he'll be sharing with us some of the recommended changes at tonight's board meeting.
So I think it's important to note that this is the first step in the process to add courses to the high school. And as they present this evening, they will be sharing concepts of courses and course descriptions. Once the board says, yes, you can move forward with the course and that concept, then it is marketed to students. And if students are interested in the course and the course has sufficient enrollment to run, then the curriculum is constructed with input from teachers and experts within the field, and the board would then approve curriculum at a later time. So I know that there was some comments at the beginning about not having it fully vetted, and this is not the time in which the board approves curriculum. This is the time in which the board approves a concept to make it offered to students. It would be to make an investment in building a curriculum to then bring to the board, and the board says, no, we don't want to offer that course, would be not a good use of our resources. So I think it's important to understand that aspect of the process. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lotus and Ms. Olson.
Thanks, Ms. Midzik. It was important for you to detail out the process, and each year I'm able to come and I'm able to present any proposed changes to the course offerings as part of our continuous improvement process with the high school curriculum and with our programming. Through the board's feedback and your future approval to one board meeting from now, that allows us to finalize, as Ms. Midzik said, all of our products and all of the resources that we give the families and students to be able to make choices for their students for next year. So there's a lot of information in this report. So I'll quickly highlight sections of the report, and then at the end, take any questions that you might have. Ms. Olson and I could both do that. The first part of the report is under the heading Science Sequencing. And although this is mainly informational for the Board of Education, as all of these courses are already approved, this work is important to be highlighted. And through the curriculum review process, Ms. Olson was able to work with the GHS Science Department and propose changes to the mandatory course sequencing, and also with the honors opportunities within these courses. The mandatory course sequence to satisfy the current 3 credits needed for graduation is proposed as follows. In 9th grade, all students will take biology with an honors option. The 10th grade, chemistry with an honors option, and 11th grade students would take most students would take physics with an honors option. So currently all students take biology as a freshman, but then students either take physics, physical science, or chemistry in the 2nd year. So in this sequence, the physical science course, traditionally taken by the non-chemistry sophomores, has been removed, and the necessary standards and skills have been crosswalked into this new 3-course sequence. In line with the district strategic action A from goal 3 of the district scorecard, these changes definitely align the new sequencing with the elimination of segregated courses, so that all students are exposed to mandatory, sequential, and comprehensive standards-rich instruction, science instruction. And much like global studies, which launched this year, science also created the opportunity for all students to opt in for designated work and projects that would allow them to transcript honors credit for each of these 3 science courses. I did include some early data from the global studies class in this report. And I'd like to say that the science department is excited about this work and looks forward to creating this new science experience for all of our students. The second section of the report is course modifications. Just like in the past, I've come to you with opportunities to get advanced placement in our advanced placement courses of biology and environmental science. We also have added other post-secondary credit opportunity, and this time AP Chemistry is now aligned to get UW credit through the college credit and high school program, which is a program through UW Green Bay. So much like the environmental science class and also the biology class, students will have two options in which to earn their post-secondary credit by taking the advanced placement test or by signing up for these college credit programs. Course deletions is always a part of this report, and as mentioned earlier, physical science will be deleted from our course offerings. We also have some courses that we're proposing for the deletion of two social studies courses that have had no or low enrollment in previous years. The civics course and also the justice legal system elective course, both are elective courses. Like I said, we've had some problems running those in previous years, and any of the cogent curriculum has been folded back into the mandatory courses for students, which is often the plan when a high interest course is no longer, we're not able to run it anymore. We also have a section of deleted family and consumer economics courses with no or low enrollment. We have a new family consumer economics teacher, Ms. Amy Vida, who has worked with us and to update the curriculum and provide new opportunities for students. There are 3 courses outlined in this report for deletion, but more importantly, I will explain the ads later on in the report. So we're really going through and kind of weeding the curriculum that currently is in the FACE program. So moving on to all the new opportunities, course additions. So we've heard a little bit about a new course. We're proposing to add an African American and Ethnic Studies elective course. So we have learning targets and the use of multiple racial, ethnic, and political perspectives are addressed and explored in the content and instructional practices of the mandatory courses of global studies and US history. But GHS uses its semester elective courses for our juniors and seniors to allow students to investigate specific aspects of the content within history. So adding a capstone course such as this, students will have the opportunity to extend their previous learning and to elevate their understanding of diverse perspectives in US history. So this is directly in line with the district strategic action goal 3 of the district scorecard, which was to add a capstone social studies course focused on the US historical narratives from leaders and people of color. The course is titled African American and Ethnic Studies, and it's available to 11th and 12th graders. This semester course will be worth 0.5 credits, and it's designed for students to be politically, socially, and economically conscious about their personal connections with local and national history. Through a focus on the valuable contributions and experiences of African Americans and other ethnic groups such as Indigenous, Native Americans, Asian Americans, and Latinx Americans. So that is the course that has been proposed. At this time, we could answer questions specifically about this, or we could move on and do that at the end of the report.
So I did have a question about this, Stephen. Thank you for your explanation. With this African American Ethnic Studies elective course, do we have any other districts that we've looked at that are offering this, or is this something completely Greendale oriented? I mean, do we have anywhere that we've looked to see like what this course offering looks like elsewhere? I don't know if that makes sense.
Sure. So we have a couple of things with that, Kathy, is the instructor that likely will teach this course has experience teaching at both the high school and the collegiate level of topics around this. And one of the things that that this will be based off of is there have been some recent book studies done by the social studies department, and also some, as part of the process to propose this course, some looking and exploring of what other schools are offering both at the high school and the collegiate level. So as Ms. Amidzik mentioned earlier, and what's included in the course description so far, there are definite ideas there, but once this is approved, all of those processes will go into go into effect as far as of identifying exactly what all the learning targets will be for this course.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yes,
Lillis, how are these courses marketed to our students for enrollment?
So Kim, that'd be a two-part question. How are they usually, and how are they going to be this year? These will, what we're thinking of because of not being in school, we are going to develop a grade level kind of a jump off page for students to go to when signing up for courses. So if I was a junior and I went to the junior page, it would not only have instructions on courses that I might have to take for my junior year, but then all of the different departments will have the ability to link videos, short descriptions. There's different marketing things that we've used in the past that now will just be available online. And so when we do have new courses, we generally hold those in a special place. We have a special document that says new courses to the Greendale High School curriculum that highlights the new opportunities for students. Just our biggest fear, and what we know happens a lot of times, is it's all handed down by word of mouth. I took that class, I like this teacher, and we want to make sure that we're providing materials that students can easily consume all the different opportunities that are available to them. Another large piece to that is the teachers themselves within the classes. So as a lot of the students that would take this course are sitting in or any course are sitting in the courses that come before them, and there's some marketing that goes on as far as what the next courses are if you're interested in these topics.
Axel and Paris, any comments about that question? How it's best to reach out to students and alert them to new classes like this? Any thoughts or feedback that you'd like to share?
Yeah, and then I also have two questions. One, I know that I'm just that kind of student that takes a ridiculous amount of time going through the handbook, looking at all the descriptions. They do have very good descriptions. I just know other people, my siblings and things like that, they would not do that. So I like the idea of the videos. I think coming forward for new courses in general, just sending out an email of the teacher of the class to all students as an option, just so they know it's out there. Because I know some people are like, I'm going to look at the handbook as a freshman, and then they'll forget about it and be like, never mind, I'll just take whatever. And they're not even aware that there's a new course or something that they might be interested in, especially coming into upperclassmen when they have more elective options and things like that. And then two of the questions I had, one, based on what the citizen said in a comment, is there any further discussion about it being a required course, or is it set in stone that it will be an elective, even if it's just for half a semester? And then do we have a teacher for this class yet?
Paris, those are really good questions. So in order for us to add, make it a required class, it would make graduation requirements change. So that's a different conversation. The other piece of like who the teacher is, I think one of the things that the citizen comments brought up, which I think is really important to highlight, is that we really need to increase our diversity of our staff in Greendale. And it'd be wonderful to have a teacher who identifies as Black teach this class. And that would be a beautiful thing. And we are working with TNTP to increase our pipeline of diverse teachers. And we're really excited about that. Right now, for the kind of those granular answers, like we're just trying to see if we can get this course approved so that we can start talking about what the curriculum will be, what we'll be teaching, what are best practices, looking at other districts, and then seeing exactly who the teacher is. Then to your point, Paris, to be able to get kids like, oh, I love that teacher, or this is exciting, let's take that, so that we get as many kids as possible to take this class. Because we don't want, we want all of our kids to have access to this class, because it's so important for Greendale students to see themselves and see others in history, so that they can grow their own knowledge of people that look like them or people that don't look like them, who have created our country's great legacy.
Okay, yeah.
I want to add, Paris, to that. The content of diverse perspectives, different racial and ethnic perspectives, different political perspectives, were revised within the curriculum adoption in 2018. So in elementary school, in middle school, in global studies and US history, there are concepts that students explore that are the foundations of the deeper dive that this elective course would be. So just like we have a social studies elective called War and Conflict, or a social studies elective called Justice and Law, it doesn't mean that we don't teach anything about any of the wars in history within the existing curriculum. You've had an opportunity to explore those wars early on. But if there is something within the curriculum that piques your interest, specifically some areas that are related to war and conflict, then you would take a deeper dive in a capstone course about war and conflict. If there are areas that pique your interest about some of the diverse perspectives within US history and global studies, then this would be a course that would be of interest to you. So it is required, but this is additional deeper dive for students who within the exploratory curriculum found a passion or an interest to learn more and dig deeper.
Okay, I see why that's like an elective choice then. Yeah, I think there's a lot covered in normal courses, and then if someone wants to dig deeper, learn more about that, they'll take an elective to further their growth in that learning. Okay, sorry, one more follow-up question, and then if Axel has anything.
Yeah.
So what does it take just for courses in general for them to get approved and become an option at our school?
So I think that's part of this process tonight is, Mr. Lotus and the administration proposes these. We will then discuss these additions and deletions to the classes, and then we will vote on approving these at our next board meeting. So that is the process. We review and understand it based on the recommendation of administration. We'll vote on it the next time, and then once whether or not that approval happens or any changes, then everyone can start working on the student handbook and promoting it going forward. So it's not a lengthy process, but it is something that the administrative team has been working on and has put some thought together and is part of the discussion tonight.
Paris, are you asking what gets it to the table with the administration to recommend it to the board?
No, I think he answered my question, just to see
good.
like, how it becomes a class. So yes, thank you.
I'm actually interested in the second part though. So so if you'd like to maybe spend a little time around the process for consideration and vetting of the courses that are presented tonight, how is that done? How does it get to this stage?
I think, I could put one thought out there, Thor, and then anyone could follow up. But it's come from a variety of different directions. We do have the cyclical curriculum process, and so as they a very common part of that is looking around and sampling what's going on in other districts, things that we want to do, things that are in line with our district goals, and courses are proposed that way. Sometimes through good hiring, we bring someone else in from a different district who has taught a class or has seen a class, and it comes to us that way. And although I'm struggling for the example right now, I know in the past that it's come from students also, as far as how come we don't have a course like this, or can we get something? And so it can come from a variety of different directions, and then it goes through me, the director of curriculum, the curriculum facilitators, and ultimately starts with tonight's process.
Project Lead the Way is a good example of that. We had a group of students who at one point said, I want to be an engineer and there's no opportunities. And so it started as a club and then went out in search of classes that might support their interest. And that has developed over time into a robust program for STEM and biomedical sciences.
Got it.
I was going to say, I want to circle back. I think Axel was going to interject. I think we had an original question about, promoting classes to students. And Axel, were you going to add some comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to add just like how really it is really important to advertise the new classes, because when Mr. Lotus said the things about the classes that were going to be removed from the school, I fully just went, I didn't know those were classes that we offered. I don't think many people knew those were classes that we offered, and that's why it was very hard for those classes to get filled. And then I also wanted to just kind of push like the thought that the African American history class should definitely be taught by a POC person, just because I personally have gone my whole life never having a history teacher that has ever been anything other than white, or at least white presenting. So I think this would be a perfect opportunity for someone to go, hey, these are some trends in history and these are how they've actually personally affected my life, and how you can go about your life being able to more accurately respect other people's culture and race.
Axel, thanks so much for highlighting that. I think your story is a sad story that a lot of kids in Greendale have experienced, is only having teachers that are white and not look like them. So I'm really thankful that you share that, because I think that is really an important part of the work we need to do around equity and representation of staff. So thank you for highlighting that, because I think your personal story really touched a lot of people. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And also Paris commented, like what she said what was her exact comment? She says, yes, Axel, period. So 100%. Thank you, Paris.
All right. So are you going to make a comment or add some feedback?
I can wait to the end. Mine's more generic. So let's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions about the social studies and this recommendation to add this African American and Ethnic Studies elective course?
Oh, one thing that might tie into the promotional piece, and the jury's still out on this, but we are doing a virtual conference for the first time through my work. And so we were trying to figure out different ways to engage and connect people with all these different sessions and opportunities, similar to obviously a daunting course catalog that some people might not read, as pointed out. So we actually used a personality quiz software to do a matchmaking based upon topics of interest and connected them with, and it streamlined it down. So we gave them their top 12 options based upon a personality quiz matching, essentially. Where you could put your own questions in, you then connect it to the different elective courseware that they have options to take, and then it presents them with here's your percent matches on these different areas. So that could be an interesting option. I mean, I know we already survey our students quite a bit, but I thought it was novel. Our team, it was a great idea with our committee that came up with this idea. More complicated than I thought to pull together in today's world of artificial intelligence and machine learning, but it should be easier and easier over time. So another thing to kind of keep in our back pocket around, could we explore something like that to help our students connect and see things that maybe they're not seeing because they're not reading it or seeing that email, and we have a lot of options, which is fantastic and great, but it's also overwhelming. So.
I did have one more question regarding this is currently listed as an 11th and 12th grade course. What's the thought behind that, and could it be extended to freshmen, sophomores?
Kathy, I would say that the thought behind it is that, as was mentioned earlier, that there are certain things that they are learning in 9th grade global studies and then 10th grade generally US studies that would feed into the development of a readiness and for an interest in some of the deeper topics. So I don't know if that would blow up anyone's curriculum world to take it at the same time, but I think there'd be more readiness for the topics and the tasks at that grade level after having the universal instruction in those previous 2 classes.
Okay, thank you.
I just had one additional question too. Someone in the citizen comments mentioned that there had already been an ethnic studies course that had failed previously. I was just wondering, I had not heard about that, if that was accurate.
There was a course that was presented and taught in 2012 and it was in the course selection guide. It was called Forgotten Histories, and it did run for a period of time, but it continued to run until it was sunset and the curriculum was evolved because it was low enrollment numbers and usually only one section of the course. So it was evolved and redeveloped, and it is currently the course called American Pop Culture. So, and American Pop Culture usually runs
Well, 2 sections.
2 sections. So they were able to double enrollments by refining and evolving the curriculum, which was approved in 2018. So I wouldn't call it failed. It just had lower enrollments than our current iteration of similar content. And so this would not replace American Pop Culture. This would be an addition to.
Thank you for the explanation.
All right, then Steve, you'll continue.
Yep, just a little more and then we can take final questions. We're also proposing the planned 3rd course of our 4-course computer science pathway. There's a graphic in the report, and it's advanced placement and project lead the way computer science A. Depending on a student's level of previous coursework and or expertise, could be a 10th through 12th grade course. It's a year-long course, and students are able to take the advanced placement test with that. And then next year at this time, I'll be coming back to the board to propose a 4th class for that sequence. And each year, this is my 4th year now that I'll be proposing a different American Sign Language course. I'm happy to say I'm back for the level 4 course. This edition will complete the American Sign Language program as far as the classroom versions of it. With continued popularity in this program, I always put the caveat out there as could result in some staffing challenges for next year, since it's a unique position to fill. Your approval of it is the first step for us to look at this as being a viable 4th level course at the high school and allow us to move forward on a successful registration process. So that course continues to move forward. Then the last 2 parts that I have, we have 2 new teachers in our elective areas. We have a new yet experienced business teacher who has some expertise in growing business and marketing programs. And so the 2 classes that we would like to put in as additions, they're high interest offerings for our students after the students have taken the foundational intro to business and marketing class. The proposed courses are advertising, sales, and social media marketing, and then sports and entertainment marketing. Sports and entertainment marketing was a class that we had about 3 or 4 teachers ago, and it was popular. It kind of declined in popularity with, I guess you would say, the interest the teacher took in continuing the course and the expertise around that. So we're excited to bring back that course, which was popular in the past at the high school. So these are 10th through 12th grade course for the social media marketing, and then a 9th through 12th grade course they could take after taking the semester intro to business and marketing. So we're excited about those courses and that update of our business program, which has been a difficult program to staff and to consistently grow over the last couple of years. And then finally, we also have a new family and consumer economics teacher. She's very interested in growing our culinary pathway offerings and creating also a capstone course. And so the 2 culinary offerings that we are looking for, one is called Foods and Society, and that's a 9th through 12th grade course. We decided to put no prerequisite on that class, and that class is a project-based course which will survey contemporary issues related to food in our society, and then also she would like to add a class called Worldwide Foods. There would be a prerequisite that they took the Intro to Foods course, which gives students a lot of content knowledge in kitchen protocols, reading recipes, nutritional facts, and then they can continue that knowledge in a class called Worldwide Foods. And each unit of study, students are going to learn about a culture, its methods of cookery, its popular dishes, and then also signature flavors. So that'll be a nice survey course through different types of foods experience than students are getting right now. Those will be popular, but to me, the most exciting of the three courses is an independent study in careers and technical education. One thing that is difficult, and it's highlighted by some of the course deletions in this report, is that Greendale High School's size and the breadth of our programming sometimes makes it difficult to sustain enrollment and opportunities in specific content, high interest courses for some students. And I was excited when Ms. Vita worked with me on this opportunity through FCCLA, Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America. It is a leadership, a curriculum, and also a competition experience for students who can propose an area of study with the teacher. There are some of these areas of study which are packaged up very nicely on the FCCLA website. There's also room for the teacher to help students develop their own curriculum and their own projects around this, but ultimately we can offer students an opportunity to explore further high interest areas, and then not only just explore those for their teacher, but also to take that into state level competitions through this organization. So things in the past, fashion design, interior design, we had event planning course at one time, and some other types of interest areas for students. We'll be able to facilitate those in this project-based course and give them an opportunity where we really probably would not be able to offer it as a course because of the number of students that would be interested in that specific topic. So that's very exciting. I have a lot to learn about that organization, and there's a lot of work to go into it, but I did the prerequisite looking around as far as the viability of and popularity of this program, and there are serious opportunities for our kids here. Then the last part of the report, the currently exploring part, two things to note there. Starting with next month's Panther Pride, which is the high school's Panther Pride month, the board will hear some current Connect staff and Connect students, their comments on the wins and also the challenges of the first 4 months of our new Connect Media Communications Academy. That'll happen next month at the board meeting. And then also Ms. Olson and I are continuing to lead efforts in planning for the next Connect Academy in a future school year to be determined. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you may have about this report.
All right, thanks, Steve. So the board, what questions or feedback do you have for Steve at this time?
I have a couple questions. One was regarding the regular honors kind of dual enrollment within the same course. Just intrigued and kind of curious. And obviously you had some insights on what's going on with the global studies. But how does it also connect with AP offerings? I'm assuming that's separated, or is right? It's not like you don't take the AP test. If you're in that course, you'd have a separate AP chemistry, which is already on the docket here, for example. And then what is the value of the UW Green Bay connection with the AP course? Is it not taking the AP test, if just getting the credit through UW Green Bay?
So I think you snuck 3 questions into that.
Yeah,
one.
sorry.
But the,
so I was like just melding those whole things together for you.
So I will try to remember those in order. So part, as we've talked about all night, is in principle, although we're not approving the science courses because they already are approved courses, the same work that the global studies teachers were doing about last year at this time would be to identify the work, the projects, the extensions that they would deem important that would be, I don't know if over and above is the right word, but outside of the universal curriculum that everyone would be getting in those courses. So not only what that would be, but also what's the best way to administer that. And because our initial numbers, and we really have a hard time this year distinguishing, is it the programming or is it just this year, which has had nothing consistent about it. You know, if you looked at the numbers I put on the global studies chart, about the same amount of students that would have taken it for honors are currently still on track for that. So I don't have the deep data as far as would those have been the students that would have been recommended for it, or are those other students that are extending themselves into those opportunities. But that is data that we're going to keep an eye on. You know, we won't know exactly what names to pull and what to study until the semester's over and the students either complete or don't complete that. The other question I remembered.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. So Steve and I have also presented on barriers to entry and barriers to access to college level courses, that being AP courses and college accredited courses. And we've presented on the idea that sometimes courses become gatekeepers of access to AP. And in years ago, honors was a prerequisite to have access to AP courses. And so decisions were made as you were entering the high school as to whether or not you would have access to honors, which then ultimately determined if you would have access to AP courses. And as we've crosswalked curriculum between a regular biology course and an honors biology course, a regular global studies course and an honors global studies course, they are significantly 75 to 80% the same course. And so that 20% difference is access to content that was being denied to some students based on previous performance, and so therefore denying them access to high rigor courses like AP. So by doing them in an integrated format, all students have access to the high rigor content and therefore have access to AP, and they would have a choice because they have exposure and they have access. It becomes the student's choice as to whether or not they want to engage in the extended learning targets to reach the honors level content.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic as an opportunity to open things up. It also is great for the students, you know, from the standpoints of kind of completing that learning triangle as well, right? I mean, the learn, practice, teach, where they can be supporting and connecting with one another in that class where you have a larger differentiation of kind of comfort, if you will, with the materials. So
yeah. And the gatekeeping that happens disproportionately impacts our students of color and our students from low-income homes. And so leveling up and providing access to all students is one of the pieces that we are working on to ensure equity of access.
Great.
And Thor, I think your final question was about the UW Green Bay credit, and there's a number of different universities that are wanting to partner with high schools to do the credit through them, and it's just UW Green Bay is just you know, similar to CAP and similar to the PI program at University of Whitewater. It's just another acronym, another opportunity. One thing that we found, because if you remember, we did run 2 of the courses for Connect through there, is a more flexible willingness to work with us for both who they would approve as an instructor and also access for students, and not having some artificial maybe prerequisites that would keep some students from having the opportunity. And so the best fit for us for the AP chemistry was UW Green Bay.
Got it. And then so if they take the AP test, is there still, I mean, if they have the cut score, they wouldn't necessarily need the college credit from UW Green Bay, correct?
Well, they usually take that they can attain the credit in any way. It's just a matter of wanting to take a high stakes test versus
getting the credit for UW Green Bay. Gotcha. Okay.
And it's just a portable UW credit too. So
great. Other comment was just, you know, it's sad to see like the civics and some of the other things that are not running anymore. Obviously that's woven into the other core courses. So I understand that's, and I think that's a great move. And even through your comments, you know, Steve, is when these things are sunset, you know, it's how do these then make sure that they're animated through the core areas? They didn't become a capstone without being already part of those core areas. So that was helpful just to kind of create some ease there. And then one question I had on American Sign Language was, my assumption, and I see that many institutions, universities are accepting that now as a kind of a foreign language credit, if not all of them, maybe. Is there college credit options available with American Sign Language that we're offering, or could this level 4 be a college level credit course?
So we have, yes, there are opportunities that way, and either through existing courses. I don't have it. I'm not going to search for right now, but there is one through Oshkosh. I'd have to go back and take a look at that. But the one of the things that in my guarded comments about being able to run a 4 class is the amount of students that make it to the 4th level, you know, as if they have to take it every single year of high school. Is if we can't offer it as a class with us, can we look to partner with the program at UW-Milwaukee or somewhere else to either have students take the course there, or to bring in an adjunct professor to give some sort of an experience here. So I think we see possibilities there, especially because there should be some opportunities for students to use what they've learned when they get to the 4th level. But first thing is to take a look at what our actual enrollment is once signups are over.
Great. And then my last question, I promise, and I won't weave 16 into this one, is around Connect. You know, obviously a program that we all are excited about. It, you know, and I know we've gotten some feedback on what's going on with the current offerings. Then there's a couple other offerings that are outlined as potential explorations. And just curious, kind of what is going to be our triggers, or what kind of you know, how do we know, one, that the programs we're running right now are kind of hitting our success metrics, and the second part of that really is just assuming that they are. You know, this seems like a really powerful way to engage students in you know, not by sectioning off different learning experiences, but rather by connecting them together, as it sounds, and weaving them all together. So you're not, you know, learning math for, you know, 45 minutes and learning science for 45 minutes, whatever it might be, but you're rather in an integrated learning environment for that half day, and connecting with real world authentic experiences. So just kind of curious, you know, what are the trigger points to really make that come to life for some of these other areas?
I would say, first of all, it's been very hard to get an accurate perception of this year's experience, with you know, with mentorship being one of the larger pieces of this, and some of the difficulties that we've had, you know, making that happen outside of what we thought that was going to look like, which were monthly in-person opportunities to work together. Obviously, we've moved those into a virtual realm, but also some of the projects that were being considered that had a huge community focus and being outside of the classroom and in the community, that we've also had to modify quite a bit. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with the board next month. I think that, and obviously Maggie or Kim could also answer. I think that
And maybe that's just,
we're at a point also, but we're also, I think we're at a point where I think we have to do, from like 2 years ago when Kim and I were exploring for the first one, I think we need to go back to looking at some of the flagship kind of programs that we could partner with around here, university or academy or otherwise, and retaking a look at student interest and opportunity, because that information is now 2 years old. So.
Got it. And that's a good answer, especially knowing that, you know, we're having a report in a month. So appreciate it.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
I just want to.
So go, Kathy.
Are you sure? Okay. I just wanted to comment that I'm excited to see education as a potential for the Connect Academy. And I know, given the circumstances we're in now, that probably would have been very difficult as well. But I'm excited to see, because I do think the education world needs more people to get involved with it. And so I think it's great that Greendale is considering that Connect Academy.
All right, thanks, Kathy. Maggie?
And yeah, the only thing I was going to say is I just want to lift up the science department, because all the work they did through the curriculum review process to really think about how we can increase rigor for students and ensure that all kids have access to an amazing college-ready science align to the NGSS standards for all kids and really stop us from being, like Kim said, those gatekeepers, and really focusing on learning targets to ensure that kids are, it's not a coverage, it's about mastering the standards, and they really have done a lot of work. So I just wanted to take my hat off to a lot of the work that they did to make this happen.
Thanks for that feedback, Maggie. And just my question is, I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. For these additions and deletions, we are not making changes to the current curriculum. So that's part of the curriculum that we approve on that regular cycle. That curriculum is not changing. It's not as if we're drawing things out of that curriculum and putting it in certain classes. That curriculum will still exist. Those expectations for those classes will still exist. We'll continue to review, math on a 4-year basis, 6-year basis, math on a 6-year basis, science on a 6-year basis, and continue to modify the curriculum to make sure there's alignment. And so these are not drawing out of that existing curriculum. So I think that's a good
correct.
clarification.
The science conversation did come out of their curriculum review because science is up
Yes.
for review this year. So we are looking at that and how, especially at high school, because they use their own curriculum that they align to the standards instead of like a boxed curriculum. So we're kind of using that to drive the decision making this year for a curriculum review.
All right, great, thank you. Very good conversation, very good discussion. And we will be bringing this back at our next board meeting to actually approve these changes so that, as was mentioned, they can be added to the course handbook and then promoted, and then determine staffing levels and where that comes from. Okay. Next on the agenda then is the trimester reports. So we've heard a couple of trimester reports earlier this fall or winter, and tonight we're going to be hearing from our 3 elementary schools.
Yes, as we talked about last time, we have scorecard goals, and the short cycles are opportunities to pilot innovations to make progress and determine what strategies we can use to achieve. I'm in a meeting, so just a second. So these are the reports that are, these reports give you a window into how school buildings are piloting innovation and looking for ways to address those goals. And so with that, I turn it over to Carrie, Sarah, and Tracy. I think that you have a presentation that you are going to share.
Sure, that was my question. Do you need us to share it? Okay, I can share it, everybody. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. You get to hear from me twice in one night. All right, so our goal at Highland View, well, to start out, our fall STAR data shows that about 49% of our students are currently at our benchmark of the 50th percentile or above in reading for grades 2 through 5. This is down from typically at the start of each school year, we're somewhere in the mid to upper 50, 55, 58%. And in first grade, this percentage is slightly lower even than the 49%. So our annual goal for Highland View is really to focus on increasing the percentage for all students scoring proficient on the STAR reading or early literacy assessment. But while intervention is important and addressed throughout our goal, as we look to solidify our reading skills and strategies for our learners prior to 3rd grade, it's really important that we also address our Tier 1 or universal instructional practices. So this is what's going to be the focus of our first short cycle goal. So based on so actually I'm going to go to the next slide and then I'll come back to this one. So based on our fall 2020 STAR early literacy assessment data for grade 1, 47% of our in-person students are currently proficient at or above the 50th percentile in reading. Right now, we don't have baseline data for our digital learners because we had some technical difficulties with having them assessed. And I think we have that figured out now for our second trimester. But even so, the score is still significantly lower than what we had seen last year, where students were coming in at about 63%. Now, granted, this is not comparing apples to apples because it doesn't include our digital learners yet this year, and the class sizes are different. You know, we only had 57 students in all of first grade last year. Just our in-person students alone are at 51 this year. So it's not quite comparing, but it's still significantly lower. So not only do we look at the significant decrease in the STAR scores, but the number of students across multiple data points. So using STAR, using the DRA, which is our diagnostic reading assessment, using teacher conferring notes and running records, we look at students who are in need of intervention. And so this tells us, while the intervention piece is important, with the number of students that show across multiple data points that they are struggling right now in reading, we see that we also need to address instruction at the tier 1 or universal level. So in order to address those gaps that we're specifically seeing at first grade, our goal is to increase the overall proficiency level of our first grade readers on the STAR Early Literacy Assessment. So we're looking to go from where we're currently at 47% to 60% by the end of January, and then to 70% by the end of the school year. And that will get us back up to par with where we were in previous school years. We're going to work on that by highlighting what we call bright spots in Tier 1 universal instruction, which will result in replication and implementation of these practices across all 4 of our first grade classrooms. So then our next steps around this will be to complete grade level meetings. We're still working on meeting with our 2nd and 4th grades to determine intervention needs, create student groupings, and assign our reading teacher, classroom teacher, or instructional paraprofessional to support small group instruction. And then the main focus will be around ongoing meetings with the first grade team to determine bright spots in their universal literacy instructional practices. So these are things that are really going well, and we want to highlight what is going well and make sure that we are leveraging those things and trying to build upon them and replicate them for consistency across all 4 of our classrooms. And then we also are still continuing to work on determining the formative assessment and data that we'll use to measure the progress as we work through achievement of our goal. So that is where we are at for Highland View.
Good evening, everybody. My goal is going to sound very similar to Tracy's goal. At Canterbury, we are also looking at reading scores, and we are looking at increasing our scores on the STAR Reading Early Literacy Assessment. And our short cycle goal at Canterbury is looking at students that scored below the 50th percentile on STAR Early Literacy and having them raise their scores by 10% on the winter assessment. So not necessarily the end of the year, but on our next short cycle. Additionally, we want to focus on that universal instruction, that tier 1 instruction within all 3 of our first grade classrooms. We know that reading is a significant predictor of academic success, and we want to make sure that we are supporting our earliest readers in school and making sure that they have the foundational skills to be able to be successful as they move throughout their career here, their academic career in Greendale and beyond. So on this slide, I've got some data for you. In 2019-20, during that school year, 40.54% of all first grade students that took the early literacy assessment scored at the 50th percentile or below. So if you look at the chart, this year it shows that 33% of our students are below the 50th percentile, which actually looks like a 7% better score than last year. But I do want to be honest, in the same thing that Tracy mentioned, this does not include our digital learners. I've got 12 additional students, Canterbury students in first grade that have not been able to take the STAR Early Literacy Assessment due to technical difficulties. So the data that you see presented on this slide is for the 39 in-person students at Canterbury in first grade. When we look at students that may need additional supports in the classroom, we first look at their STAR Early Literacy score, which is included here. If a student scores at or below the 50th percentile, we then look at additional assessments. We look at the student's DRA, which is the developmental reading assessment. I've included students' DRA information in the chart that's presented on the slide. Students that are at grade level, which is tier 1, score at a 6 or greater. Students that may need tier 2 support score between 4 and a 6, and students that may need tier 3 supports are scoring at a 3 or below. Finally, we bring in that third data point. So we've got STAR Early Literacy, we've got a DRA score, and then we also, if we're concerned about students and want to just dig further in, we look at their Ames Web assessment. That Ames Web is a screener and can be used as progress monitoring or benchmarking for our students. It allows for a standards aligned measures and allows for us to measure student growth over time. By bringing in these potentially, depending on student scores, 3 data points per student, we're able to make informed academic decisions based on a multitude of sources instead of just looking at a single data point, because it's not necessarily fair to look at one student assessment score and make all kinds of decisions based on that. So we want a well-rounded set of scores for our students. So through this thorough examination of our first grade learners, it's shown us that we need to provide specific reading support to some of our students. Additionally, when 33% of our students are scoring below the 50th percentile, we want to make sure that we're examining that tier 1 instruction, which leads me into our next step. So we will continue to meet as a first grade team to determine the positives occurring in each classroom. Tracy called them bright spots. So that's the same thing we're looking for with our tier 1 universal instruction. We then want to leverage those across all 3 of our in-person classrooms to create consistent procedures and practices. Once we have that digital data, we can also examine that as well. And then finally, we too will continue to determine what what measurement tool we're going to use to track progress. Goodness, past my bedtime, I'm sorry. Track progress during this short cycle. So that's what's happening at Canterbury.
Good evening. At College Park, we have a reading goal, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about our culture and climate goal tonight. With the unique situations this year, we felt it was really important to focus on social emotional learning for our students. And it also came out through our PTO meetings. A lot of our families were feeling disconnected from school, not being able to come in. A lot of our families are in the digital learning platform. They wanted to know how the kids would keep the connection to College Park. So to measure how well we do on this, we're going to be looking at those Studer data, the surveys for families and students. And even though we couldn't measure that last fall with our last spring with the change in learning, we want to continue to average a 4 on that. And this year we have the ability to dig deeper into our demographic groups. So looking at race and ethnicity, English proficiency, economic status, making sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our families. For the short cycle, we want to make sure that at least 90% of our students continue to be involved in our character education lessons at each grade level, and also that we can maintain or increase the engagement in our PTO events. So earlier this year, we had 18% at the Harvest Festival that the PTO planned, and that was a virtual event where they had a dance party on Facebook Live, and then each grade level was able to get together, and we had an average of 8 students per grade level. So 18% of our kids were there. We did have 100% participation in our character education to support social emotional learning with our books of the month. So for this, the whole goal cycle, a few things we did to increase engagement. I started sharing morning video announcements with our whole school, and the students who are in the digital environment have access to that, as well as our in-person learners. And during that time, we connect to our theme of Believe in Yourself, Be You, and our monthly character attributes. We also talk about events of cultural significance, celebrating birthdays. We talk about different holidays that members of our community may celebrate throughout the year. We talked about Diwali earlier in the school year. On Thursday, we'll be talking about Hanukkah, and just sharing good wishes to everyone who may be celebrating those. We talked about we celebrated Rosa Parks and the anniversary of her refusal to give up her seat on the bus. Today we talked about Pearl Harbor Day, so it brings in historical, cultural events that are starting a springboard for classrooms to follow up on. We also do character education with books of the month, and as you know, all three of us work closely together. And when Tracy was talking about the Equity and Inclusion Institute, we also looked through some books there. This month, our book of the month is Hair Love, which is on, and our character trait is acceptance. And it's a story of an African-American father working with his little girl on her hair and helping her learn to love her hair and appreciate all of the different twists and curls that she may have. So we'll be reading that and talking about acceptance for this month. Literature continues to be a common theme at all three of our schools to make kids feel included and connected. Part of that, some of you may have seen, the three of us did a book of the month on Be Kind when we had National Kindness Day to kind of model everybody working together, and it tied back in with what Tracy had talked about with saying people's names correctly. That was a part of the story, how important that is to helping all people. And then the last thing that we've been doing regularly is our PTO is really working hard to try to provide some social events. So while we can't have those in-person festivals and activities, they are coming up with some really clever and creative ways to engage all of our kids. There are games that they play, and then they give the kids time just to talk and chat with each other in a non-school environment via Zoom. Lots of our teachers stop by to visit those classrooms. So that we're hoping that by using all of these strategies, we will continue to grow that strong sense of community and maintain those scores of satisfaction for students and parents at the end of the year.
All right, thank you, everyone. What questions or feedback does the board have for Tracy, Carrie, and Sarah?
Well, I just want to say it's no small task with there being half, or well, not half, but as many in person and then also the virtual. So I just want to thank you all for the efforts you're making. I know from my personal experience, there's been a lot of technical glitches that can stand in the way, but what I like about all three of you is that you don't make excuses for it. You're actually planning and trying to do your best to bring the students forward. So I just want to thank all of you for your hard work.
Thanks, Kathy. Anything else? All right. Thank you for coming this evening and participating in tonight's meeting. Next item on the agenda is policy. So our policy committee has been busy, and tonight they're bringing forth a number of policies related to school board operations, primarily, as well as some administrative superintendent policies. So Kim, anything that you'd like to highlight? I looked and it doesn't look like there's significant changes, but primarily a few edits or small changes. Anything else that you'd like to highlight?
No, I think the most significant change is to not have separate policies for the board meeting, which is typically the third Monday of the month, and the work session meeting, which is the first Monday of the month. They have striking similarities, so the components of the work session were incorporated into the regular board meeting policy. So we're looking to delete 174 and use some of the content in the policy 171. Other than that, they are some fairly minor revisions. So if the board had a chance to review and has questions, we can certainly respond.
All right, so any questions? So if we look at the first grouping, board meeting, regular board meeting minutes, regular board meetings, special board meetings, closed sessions, work sessions, annual school district meeting, and the procedure. Any questions about those? Okay. Then continuing, then we had the board calendar reports, the school board meeting minutes, ad hoc and advisory committees, and recognition for accomplishments. So again, those are all part of board operations. So any other comments about or questions about that?
We are looking to delete the board reports calendar because it is already part of one of the other policies and not necessary to have the 2-sentence policy.
So, and that was going to be my question. So that's part of another policy. We would continue to establish an annual board calendar of reports per policy.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, then there's Superintendent of Schools, a couple of policies as well as some exhibits, being the job description and evaluation. Any questions about that?
Yes, I had I guess question slash thought on 222, the superintendent of schools. In that policy, it looks like you're striking eligibility to hold a Wisconsin license to teach, and I guess I have some strong thoughts about that. I personally feel that that should be still a qualification that is listed. I'm not understanding completely why it's being taken out. I know I talked to Kim a little bit about that earlier today, but I feel it's very important for that particular guideline to be part of the superintendent's qualifications. So I would like to see it remain.
To be clear, I am a licensed teacher. So.
Yes, and I knew that.
Yeah.
But I guess in going forward, that would be my question is, would we look for, would candidates not have that qualification? I think that's troublesome if they don't.
So when we were reviewing this, there was a couple of things that came up. One was, as the chief executive officer of the district, that person will never be teaching in our district per se. So is that active license matter? So that was where we were kind of started that conversation. It also limits, not to say that we'd ever go this way, and obviously we are very satisfied and happy with where we are currently, so we hope to not use this policy. But the other reality is that there's obviously also a growing number of superintendents that are coming out of different areas, right, of administration. And so does that mean that we would never accept someone who doesn't have a teaching license if that role opened up? So, thinking like even our administration team here, business manager, people services, other areas that might not have active eligible teaching licenses. So we were just, once again, this is not saying that we will select or not select. It was just more opening that up to say we want the best CEO, chief executive officer for the district as possible. And we didn't want all of a sudden that one credential to be the issue, since that will never actually be used in the position.
Well, I want to challenge that because I don't know how it's been for sure in Greendale right now, but I think that given the fact that we've been short on staff and so forth, I can see that a superintendent may need to step in at some point. I mean, Kim, has that happened to you at all during this time? Just with the numbers getting short, but I guess I still have strong feelings about that particular criteria, because I do believe it should be a criteria of a superintendent that they've had that teaching experience. That's my personal belief.
No, and I appreciate that. Any other thoughts or reactions to that? I know, Thor, you kind of shared the conversation that happened as part of the policy committee. I guess when I saw that, again, reflected on that to say, does that make sense? Wouldn't we want to do that? And perhaps we would, but then I thought back as some of our conversations as we've looked to say, okay, what does a profile of the superintendent look like? Who are we looking to attract and retain? And I don't recall hearing that a license to teach coming from our community, from our staff, from our students, that being a strong must-have. So again, as we go through the process, as future boards go through the process, that certainly might be a requirement or qualification that is necessary or strongly desired. But I'm reluctant to keep it in there because I think, it may limit, like you said, it may limit a pool of candidates that we would be looking at.
I have a question. In order to receive a superintendent's license, I thought that that the individual had to have a teaching license.
Not necessarily a teaching license. There are other categories of DPI licenses that would be eligible for an advanced degree in a doctoral program to be licensed as a superintendent. So for example, there's pupil services, guidance counselor, et cetera, or business manager. They are eligible for DPI licensure. And once they have that licensure, they would be eligible for programs for the superintendent's license. So they do have to have an existing license through the DPI, but it does not have to be in the category of teacher.
Thank you for that clarification, Kim.
One other thing, just to clarify, because I think everyone on this Zoom call realizes this, but just to put everyone at ease once again, like this is our standard review of the 100 series. So we're not reviewing this policy for any other reason than it's the time to finish our review on the 100 series policy.
That's a good call out. So, we've heard a couple of feedback. I just want to make sure we're getting everyone's thoughts. Kim or Noelle, I guess, what are your thoughts on striking it? I know, Noelle, you were part of the policy committee. Whether we want to continue to include it or we are comfortable with striking it. I think everyone's kind of shared their thoughts. I want to make sure that we get everyone's feedback before we proceed with how we would present this at our next board meeting for approval at our second reading.
I mean, I was under the same impression Kim was at the time we went through the policy, that you had to have some sort of educational licensure, like teacher, or have 3 years of experience. And then Kim explained that no, you can have a licensure in a different area, which made sense. And you wouldn't want to eliminate other qualified candidates that may not have a teacher's license. I would want to make sure that the person who is coming in as superintendent has some sort of educational background and understands the educational piece. Otherwise, I would be, as a constituent and as somebody who's on the board, I'd be very concerned about having somebody who doesn't have that experience, whether they're actually teaching or they have some other experience in a different area.
And do you think that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you think that is covered in letter B, where the superintendent shall meet all the certification requirements of the state of Wisconsin DPI?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so, because they're not going to become a superintendent if they don't have some other licensure under the state of Wisconsin.
Okay.
If that's at least the way I understand it. Am I correct, Kim? Kim,
yes, that's my understanding. There have been some changes to licensing and there continue to be some license changes, but as of the last I was aware of program, you needed to already hold a license to be eligible.
Okay, and then Kim, Salem, and any other thoughts or comments?
Yeah, so I was just looking up DPI right now, and it does either people services or business manager licensure. So yes, I am okay with that also.
Unless we put something in there that says, gives some sort of educational experience, keeping it open, but doesn't specifically tie to teacher licensure.
And I think I see that in A1, experience in education with a minimum of 3 years in administration.
Okay. It won't open up on my computer, so I can't see it.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have that they must possess experience in education with a minimum of 3 years in administration and a minimum of a master's degree with a doctorate preferred. And then the superintendent shall meet all certification requirements of the state of Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right, so I certainly, I think we heard from the board, and there's a variation of opinions, but I think the consensus is that we would, bring it back with that stricken from the policy at our second reading.
Are we able to separate that one off when we take the vote on it? I just, again, will just reiterate, I see what you guys are saying, but I have concerns about that not being part of the language.
I'll call for a motion. If someone wants to make it for a motion excluding that one, we can vote for all others. We'll still have to vote for it. And whether you want to make a comment or we vote for that one separately, we can certainly, if someone wants to make a motion that way, we can do that. So, all right. And then the last couple of policies, the last policy is regarding purchasing. So you
this
see
one,
that.
on this one, there's some new parameters around dollar thresholds in which the bidding process occurs. So originally it was just within the budget, and the recommended changes set dollar thresholds for when we would go out to bid and when we would do an RFP process.
Okay. Has this been reviewed with the citizen finance team?
We did have conversation around this policy with the citizen finance team. So it incorporates some of the feedback that they thought it was appropriate to go down this road. It's really creating some more specific parameters in how we purchase so that there's greater accountability. So the 3 levels are at $10,000 that you will seek 3 quotes. We're being specific about the number from vendors. At 25,000, doing a request for a proposal by the district unless it hits certain thresholds. For instance, if there's a state contract that already exists and that's the best pricing, we don't need to do an RFP in order to find that out. But in other cases, we would go through that RFP process. And then at 150,000, that's where it would include board approval. That's a change in terms of the board levels of engagement right now, that the board does not approve purchases, but the board approves payments. This makes that change because we believe at that threshold that it's appropriate that the board, as representatives of the community, would want to know more information about that particular purchase, how it's helping support goals that we have within the district, what's the process been to make that purchase. And so in those cases, those would come forward to the board. But really, we're talking about items such as health insurance, roofing, large capital projects, iPad and Chromebook purchases for the district, our bus transportation contract. Those are the types of items that would be coming to the board level for approval.
And that was one thing we talked about too, because obviously the last thing the board wants to do, at least I want to do as a member of the board, I guess I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone else, is to hinder administration's ability to essentially do the work that's in front of you. So we had a good conversation around that in the policy committee, and the $150,000 number didn't seem to create an issue. And one of the comments that we left with was, obviously this is a policy, and if it starts to become a problem, we can address it and change the policy at that time. But we thought this was a good place to start and move forward with.
Just a point of clarification, I think with this policy came up once before when I was on the policy committee, right? So this is kind of coming full circle then.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because it looked really familiar, and I'm like, I thought I was in on the language on there somewhere.
Correct. Yeah, it's been.
I was going to say, if you look at the revision date, it was revised in June of 2019.
Got it. Yeah, it was having a little deja vu there.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? I'm glad to hear that we continue to utilize the citizen finance team to provide their feedback and tap into the resources of the community. So thank you there. All right, we will be bringing back these policies at our next board meeting. That'll be the second reading, and we will then vote on approving those policies.
Joe, in the interest of time, I would suggest that we table the book discussion until the meeting on the 21st, as there are fewer items on the agenda for the 21st so that we would have time to have that discussion. If people object and want to have a conversation, we can, but I would recommend tabling it.
No, that's a good point. Any questions about deferring item number 10, the discussion on the book, chapter 7 and 8?
I'm good with that. Do we need a motion at all?
No, we'll just come back to that. All righty, so then we will bring that back on a future board meeting or our next board meeting. Being virtual, all the comments were read at our beginning of our meeting. And so then we will go into closed session. So I need someone to make a motion to go into closed session. We will not be returning into an open session after the closed session. We'll just adjourn after that. So if someone can make a motion to adjourn into closed
Move to
session.
go into closed session. Go adjourn to go into closed session.
I second.
There's a motion, a second, to adjourn in closed session under Wisconsin Statute 19.85, subsection 1, subsection C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. The board, as I mentioned earlier, the board will not return to open session. All right, so our adjourn will be signing off with this Zoom link, and then Kim, you have shared a different link with us. So if we can sign